On this episode of Get Judged by Byron Browne. This company or one of the companies that you were working for, did they want to drug test you?
My husband said to me before he dropped me off, don't smoke any weed.
Don't do that.
No, she can't.
Don't do that. No.
Did she ever show you the will?
I never saw the will at all.
So it sounds like you've kind of been led astray maybe by your family members.
Oh my God, Nicole!
I'm Byron Browne, the anti-lawyer lawyer. I'm a husband and a father. I fight for the little guy. And I'm a no-nonsense lawyer with a reputation for never losing in court. I'll judge your situation, and I'll tell you straight out if you got a case. It may not be the answer you want, but it will be the judgment you need. Time to get judged by me, Big B. Hey, this is Get Judged by Byron Browne. I'm Byron Browne, and with me as always is Danya, the Duchess, taking your calls. We got another great show lined up for you, so let's get into it.
All right, so with so many states legalizing marijuana, this is going to be a really interesting call, and I'm really excited to hear your take on it. So, Nicole, you are on with attorney Byron Browne, our anti-lawyer lawyer. What's your question?
Hi, I'm doing good. Good morning. I need to know what my rights are regarding medical marijuana across state lines. I'm a proud card-carrying Californian who often works for companies in states where it's still illegal. And for example, 4 years ago, while the company I worked for was being acquired by a company in Michigan at the time, I was heading to my favorite music festival in Napa. And my husband said to me before he dropped me off, don't smoke any weed. You might get drug tested. I know. And so I said, don't worry, it's Napa. I'll just drink wine. I'll be cool. I'm smart. And sure enough, I was at Snoop Dogg's concert at the music festival. Yeah, so I took one or three hits off a joint, and sure enough, that following Monday, I got an email saying I had to do a drug test within the week.
Okay, and did you do the drug test, and did you pass?
Well, I freaked out, right? Because I'm a respected professional in my industry. I didn't want to lose my job, and so I was too scared to take the test. So I started calling every lawyer I could think of. I was desperate. I was taking teas and juices
and cranberry juice and lots of water and
oh yeah, I mean, I was practically howling at the moon on that Wednesday.
So what was the result of the test, Nicole?
So the lawyer I talked to said take the test and we'll figure it out after you take the test. But I did ask my husband, who works in corporate ethics, to pee in a condom for me.
Oh my God, Nicole.
I was desperate, and he told me no, that I had to deal with the consequences of my actions.
But please, so tell me the result of the test, please, Nicole.
Okay, so I passed the test, but I need to know what my rights are because I often work for companies that are headquartered in states where it's still illegal.
So when you say that, are you an employee of the company, or are you working as a 1099?
Yeah, I'm an employee. I'm a full-time salaried employee often for companies where it's not legal.
Okay, so the company that you work for that's not legal, do they have a policy that states anything about marijuana use?
The policy is that, well, first of all, they can drug test you at any time. And if you do not pass the drug test, you're liable for termination.
Okay, so the good thing is Governor Newsom passed a law that protects employees in your exact situation. And it specifically states that no employer can discriminate against you, can fire you, can terminate you, can discipline you for your off-the-job marijuana use. The fact that the employer's in another state doesn't matter. If they employ you in the state of California, they have to comply with California law. And California law allows you to use medical marijuana, just like you are. Now, this is the thing. You obviously can't be high when you're on the job. So if you're on the job and you're high and you take a drug test and it shows the metabolites within your system exceed what is allowed, they are allowed to discipline you in that regard. But you show up to work, you're good, you're cognizant, you're aware of everything, you're not feeling the effects of the THC, they can test you, they can legally still require you to take the test in the state of California, but they can't take any adverse action against you. It's just like, think about alcohol, right? Alcohol is legal. You can drink alcohol, but you can't drink at work, and you
Right.
can't show up for the job drunk.
Huh.
So that's a really good way to think about medical marijuana, just like alcohol. But the fact that they're out of state, you're safe. As long as you're not going to work high, you're safe, Nicole.
What happens if Nicole, because it is medicinal, it's her medicine, she
100%.
needs it. So if she flies to another state with her medicinal marijuana to a state that's not legal,
Don't do that.
no, she can't.
Don't do that. No. When you fly, it's federal law.
Okay.
Okay, so you're crossing state borders, which makes it a federal issue, and federal law is still clear, is that it's illegal. So what I would always tell people, like, if you fly to another state, just because you have your prescription in the state that you're in, doesn't mean you're going to be safe. I always advise everybody, keep it at home.
Right.
Keep
so,
it at home.
So if she flies, let's say, you said Ohio, right?
Correct.
So if she flies to Ohio, it's still in her system. Maybe she smoked a joint before taking her flight or something.
I would always err on the side of caution.
Right.
If you're flying to another state, I would just abstain
Right.
for the time that you're in that state to play it safe,
Okay.
so you don't get in trouble,
Yeah.
Nicole. Again, we don't want to get you in trouble. We don't want you, we know that you're following the law. We really appreciate you sharing your story, but 100%, they can make you take that test in the state of California, but they can't take any adverse action against your off-the-job medical marijuana use. I appreciate your time, Nicole. Thank you very much. And here's my closing statement. You just got judged.
All right, so that was a fun one.
It was a really fun one. Really topical, too. I think a lot of people have that question. I think
Yeah.
there's still a lot of confusion.
There
Obviously,
is.
everything with medical marijuana and recreational marijuana, it's not legal in every
Very
state.
different. Two different
And,
things.
and this is the one thing about the law. It always takes time to catch up with reality.
Yeah.
And so we see some gaps there. And the reason why that is because we got to let it play out.
I love how you answered that, because the question about like her taking her medicinal marijuana to another state is very important. A lot of people don't know that.
No, they don't. And that's where I think a lot of people can get in trouble in too. That, hey, you
Yeah.
think, hey, look, I'm in my state. I got my medical marijuana card, which they kind of look at it like
Yeah.
a prescription, right? Is, hey, now I'm going to travel with it.
Yeah.
But the problem is, in a lot of states, it's still not legal. And the
Right.
bigger problem is, as soon as you're traveling and you're crossing state lines, even if you're not in the TSA, all those airports are federal airports. So federal law applies.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, be careful.
Yeah.
And it's better just to abstain and not carry anything with you and not use it
Yeah.
than it is, because the trouble you could get into could be a lot.
All right. Enjoy your butt at home, people.
Welcome back, everybody. What do we got, Donya?
I can't think of anything that causes more controversy than a will. I feel like this is what a lot of families end up fighting over. And right now we have John on the phone. John, you're on with attorney Byron Browne. What's your question?
Hi. So, I was wondering, am I entitled to the proceeds of a house bought for me as a child that was then later on sold by a relative?
Okay, now you say bought for you. Who bought you the house, and how do you know they bought it for you?
My grandmother bought the house for me because there was a family emergency with custody and also adoptions, essentially. So I had to get taken out of the adoption center and moved into a house quickly with a relative.
How old were you when this happened, John?
I was 1 year old.
Okay, and then when you say bought you the house, I'm assuming that she didn't put the house in your name. Is that fair?
She didn't put like my name on the deed, of course, but she bought it for my for the purpose of me being taken out of foster care.
So who lived in the house with you, father or mother or both?
Father.
Okay, and I'm assuming grandma passed away. Is that correct?
Yeah, she passed away in, I believe, 2009.
Now, John, did she ever show you the will?
I never saw the will at all.
Has anybody seen the will?
My dad has. He told me that it's in a safe deposit box.
Have you ever heard of the will going through probate or hearing of a reading of the will? Do you remember hearing anything like that?
To be honest with you, I never even knew what a will was because of how young I was.
I'm also
yeah.
going to ask this because when you first started on the call, you said a relative
Yeah.
is the person
It
that has
was-
to do with this whole house situation. But you mentioned your dad is the one that has the will, but won't let you see the will. So is he the relative that we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
yes, he is.
he sold the house
Mhm.
without consulting with you. Is that fair?
Sketchy.
He did speak with me about it. He did speak with me about it previously, but I did mention to him about how, like, I really do want to have a house of my own.
Right.
So that way, whenever I grow up and whenever he passes on, then I can get that house. But since he sold it for very dirt cheap. He sold it for like $19,000.
When he sold the house for dirt cheap, did he give you any of the money?
He gave me $2,000.
John.
So, John, this is the thing. When anybody passes away, there's a thing called probate. And that's just the court going through the deceased person's estate. If she had a will, then the court would ensure that there's a personal representative assigned to her case. And that personal representative has a legal duty to notify everybody within the will if they're a beneficiary within the will. So the fact that nobody contacted you leads me to believe that you weren't listed as a beneficiary. It's very common in situations like this, exactly what you described. People in the family tell you certain things, say certain things, and I get it that you have a feeling about this. However, at the end of the day, the law doesn't really care about your feelings. Even if she didn't have a will, that house would have gone to her surviving children. So it sounds like even if she didn't have a will or if she had a will, she gave it to your father. Your father would not be able to sell that house if it wasn't in his name. The courts wouldn't allow it. Escrow wouldn't allow it. The real estate wouldn't allow it. So it sounds like you've kind of been led astray maybe by your family members. I get it. Grandma might have said what she said to you. I get it. I think grandparents make these promises to their grandkids with the best intentions. And maybe she really intended for you to have that house. But at the end of the day, it either matters what's in her will, or if she didn't have a will, her surviving children would have been able to take that house. Now, was your father, did your father have any siblings, or was your father an only child?
My dad had 3 sisters.
Okay. Now, did any of those 3 sisters receive anything within that will, or when your grandmother passed or their mother passed?
They, the amount of money that my grandma had in her account was spread amongst the 4 of them equally.
See, and that kind of tells me everything I almost need to know, John, right? It's like her estate, the money, the property, her personal property, it was likely all divided amongst the children. Now, if those children passed away or they predeceased their mother, then it would have gone to her grandchildren, and then you would have had a legal right to that property. But I'm sorry you went through it. I'm sure your grandmother wanted you to have the house.
Byron, I don't like the law in this situation.
You know what? A lot of people don't like the law, but just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's wrong.
Well, so here's my thing. I just feel like with John telling us that his dad claims to have the will, but he won't show him the will. Doesn't that feel a little sketchy?
It sounds shifty for sure, but again, when it comes down to the law, the court isn't going to allow him to do what he did if he didn't have the right. And the law is the law.
Yeah.
So, right, he went through a lot of legal proceedings, not only the will, but then you had the sale of the house. Yeah. There's no way he would have been able to sell that house if it wasn't in his name. If something's in somebody's name, they have the legal right to sell it.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, I think John, I just don't think he got a case.
I'm sorry, John. I've got your back, though. I'm with you in spirit.
And here's my closing statement. He shoots, he misses.
Oh, John, buddy.
Johnny. I mean, I feel for him, right? It's funny. My grandma made a promise to me at a young age that she was going to give me a sum of money. But just like those promises, like when there's no exchange, and that happens to a lot of people too, just like John, they're like, hey, my grandma promised they're going to pay for my college. Well, a promise in and of itself isn't a binding contract either. It's a gratuitous gift.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for John, I believe him. Yeah. I'm sure grandma said, hey, I want you to have the house.
Yeah.
And she probably just didn't get around to revising the will.
I do too, and I feel like he has a good heart. Because, I mean, here's the thing. If your parent's involved in the situation and your dad is not showing you the will, that feels very sketchy to me.
Well, and that's the other thing. Just like you said at the top of the episode is, you know, with families come high emotion. With wills come high emotion.
Yeah.
So for him to be as calm, cool, and collected as he is, I mean, maybe it's been so long he's kind of collected himself, but he really presented his legal issue in a very straightforward way, which I appreciate. Yeah. But it was really, this is one that was really black and white.
I mean, I also have to commend you, John, because you trying to still have that relationship with your dad despite all of this, you're putting what's important in the forefront, which is your relationship with him. So
yeah, that's the most important thing, John. Family. Appreciate it.